Hello everyone, welcome to this video tutorial on how to read a Greek New Testament critical apparatus. What is a critical apparatus and what is it used for? A critical apparatus is a tool that's used to trace all of the textual variants or the variant readings or other readings in the Greek New Testament. Now we possess close to about 6,000 Greek New Testament manuscripts, but we also have manuscripts of other languages, such as Latin, Coptic, and Syriac. Some critical apparatuses include all of these languages, while some do not. The apparatus that we're going to be looking at today is probably the most simple apparatus to read, and we're going to be using the SBLGNT, the SBL Greek New Testament Critical Apparatus. And if you don't have the critical apparatus, you can go to their website here, which is SBLGNT.com, and you can download it for absolutely free. I'm going to be using Logos Bible software for this demonstration and for these video tutorials. And so if you have Logos Bible software, you can see the format is right here to download it. And if you want both the apparatus and the SBLGNT together, you can download a PDF from their website as well. So let's go ahead and get started here. Now, again, I'm using Logos Bible software, and one of the things that it's important to do before you start trying to read any critical apparatus is to go to the introduction here and to read the introduction. And what the introduction does is it gives you the abbreviations, the symbols. It tells you how the apparatus is set up. And we'll give you all kinds of valuable information that you're going to need to be able to read it properly. And here in the introduction, we're looking at the actual text, which is the SBLGNT, and we're looking at all of the manuscripts, or actually editions in this case, critical editions, that it is compared against. And so what apparatuses will do is they will take a single critical edition, such as the NA28 or the UBS 5th edition, or in this case the SBLGNT, and they'll compare all of the other manuscripts to that particular edition. That will be known as the base text. Now you might be asking yourself, what is a critical edition? Well, critical edition is simply a compilation of all of the readings or variants into one single volume. So what they've done was they've looked at all the manuscripts in all these different languages, Greek and Latin and Syriac and all the other languages of the New Testament, and they've decided which ones are the best readings, and they've taken those best readings and put them into a single edition. And so what the SBL Greek New Testament has done, their apparatus, instead of comparing all the different manuscripts, such as papyruses, lectionaries, codexes, or minuscules, or anything like that, what they've done was they've compared their base text to critical editions. And here in the SBLGNT, it's 4 main critical editions, and this is what this introduction tells us. It's WH stands for Westcott Hort. TREG stands for the Tregillis New Testament Edition. The NIV obviously is the New International Version, the family of manuscripts that were used to translate that. And the RP stands for the New Testament, which is the Robinson-Pierpont edition of the New Testament. And if you keep reading the introduction, you can read down here the establishing the text and what the philosophy kind of behind what they did to do that. And then what's really important are the symbols and the abbreviations that are going to be used in the text itself. And you want to take some time to familiarize yourself. And what I like to do is always open up a second copy of this, which in Logos you can do by simply, and I'll show you how to do it here real quick. If you search, I've already got it searched up here, but if you see the apparatus, you can open that, and now it's going to open, but you can right click on it and you can duplicate a tab, and then float it into a second window and minimize it. That way, if you need to refer back to the symbols, you don't have all of them memorized or all the abbreviations, you can simply refer back to it without losing your place in the apparatus. And then you can link your main apparatus to the Bible itself so that it scrolls with it. But the symbols used here are very, very minimal, which is why we're using the SBLGNT critical apparatus for our first demo. Now, my hope is to start slowly here and work our way up to something a little more difficult. Eventually, I'd like to be able to do a video demonstrating how to read the Center for the New Testament Textual Studies, or the CNTTS critical apparatus, which is known as the most comprehensive critical apparatus on the market today. But for now, we're going to start slow, and we're just looking at these 3 types of symbols here, and these are going to explain to us when we run into it in the SBLGNT. Well, it's going to explain to us what type of variant it is, and this tells you, these little brackets here tells you that it pertains to the following word, and basically that's what the apparatus is going to do. You're going to go to the apparatus, it's going to tell you what kind of variant it is, whether it's an addition, whether it's an omission, or whether it's a different word altogether or a different phrase altogether. And of course, these here, these have to do with single words. These has to do with groups of words. And then the brackets have to do with whether the text is actually genuine or not. And then if you keep reading the introduction, you'll come down here and read each of the symbols, and they tell you what all these symbols are and what they're going to be used for, and then the abbreviations. So you really want to familiarize yourself with this introduction. At least read through it once, I would say, before you really jump into it and start trying to read from the text. And so what we're going to do here, we're going to minimize this, and we're going to get going here. And one thing I do want to encourage you, if you're going to use a critical apparatus, you should have at least a base knowledge of the Greek language. I'm not saying you got to be a scholar to read it, or I'm not saying you have to be 100% fluent in Koine Greek to read it, but it's helpful to know what it is, to know what you're looking at. Otherwise, you're just going to be looking at a variant and say, oh, this word is really this word. Okay, I don't have any idea what it means, but okay. So at the very least, and particularly if you have Logos Bible software, they're really good at this, is there's actually a Greek tutorial that goes over the entire alphabet of the Greek alphabet. It goes over all the letters. It shows you how to pronounce them, how to write them. Then it gives you a lot of different common words that you see with those letters. So at the very least, if you can, familiarize yourself with the alphabet and how the words are pronounced, and then get a knowledge of some of the more common words that are going to be used. And that's going to help you a whole lot. It might not help you 100%, but it's going to help you a whole lot. Now, before we get started, I'm just going to kind of show you my setup here. And what I have is a parallel window here. In Logos Bible software, there's a feature called multi-view. At least that's what it was when it first came out. I guess it's still called that, but it allows me to put 2 texts side by side so that the text always scrolls together. Before, you would have to, you see these little letters A. If you're not familiar with it, you can link all your resources together so everything scrolls together. Well, in this parallel window, I don't have to do that. All of these that are marked A are linked to these 2 windows. And so here I have my English text, which is the New King James Version. That's my preferred Bible. And then over here, I have the actual text of the SBLGNT apparatus. And then over here in this window here, I have my different editions open. I have the SBLGNT, which is the base text. I have here the Nestle Al-Aland 28th edition. Here, I believe this is my Westcott and Hort. Yep, this is my Westcott and Hort. Then here will be the Robinson Pierpont. Over here is the CNTTS, and I just use that sometimes to compare. We're not going to really look at that today. I do not have access to the, we saw the 4 down there, and I'll show it to you again. We saw the 4, which is the Textus Receptus. TR, I was thinking of Tregulus here. But the TR TREG, the Tregulus. I do not have that one, so we won't be able to look at that one. But basically the way the text is set up, and we're going to look at a couple of different passages here. Basically the way the text is set up, and again, this is where it's going to be beneficial to know a little bit of the Greek. Basically the way the text is set up, we're going to go over a couple of verses here. Romans 5:1, therefore having been justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. And so if we look at the textual apparatus here, we see verse 5:1 is dealing with this phrase, we have peace. And if I click on that here in Logos and have my reverse interlinear open, it will go down to this Greek word. And here's the way this apparatus is set up. And again, this is very simple to use. The first thing you're going to have is you're going to have the reading of the base text, which is this here, the SBLGNT, in bold. So this is what the base text reads. Then following that, you're going to have the critical additions that support this base reading. So according to this apparatus, ekamen is what is in the SBLGNT, and if we look over here, we see ekamen. We certainly see that. Now, according to this, the NA28, the Nestle Aland 28, and the Robinson Pierpont both have this reading here, ekamen. So if we go to the NA28, which is this here, again, we see ekamen here, so we know that's correct. And then we go to the Robinson Pierpont, and again, we see ekamen. And so what this apparatus is telling us is that the base text is supported by the critical edition of the Nestle Aland 28th edition and the Robinson Pierpont. But if we come over here, now this little bracket here, if we remember the symbol here, this is separating the variants and different how the different critical editions read. According to this, the Westcott Hort and the Tregulus both have ekamen. So what has happened is that they've replaced this omicron here with this omega. Now we cannot check the Tregulus because I do not have it. However, I do have the Westcott Hort, which should be this edition right here. And indeed, I've already got it highlighted here. We see ekamen with the omega rather than the omicron. And so it's pretty simple to read. You go through each one, and the beginning of the verse or the beginning of the chapter will have the chapter number and the verse number. Thereafter, it will have just the verse number. So we see here, this will be verse 3. We go down to verse 3 here. I'm going to click on that. And so we will be looking at this word here, and the Westcott Hort, the NA28, and the Robinson Pierpont all have this calcomatha here. So if we looked at each of these, we would definitely see, and I do not have my glasses on, so let me bend down a little bit closer here. We're looking at 5.3. Here it is, and by the way, here's this mark. That's actually the NA28. This takes you to another one, and we'll look at that later. So it was the NA28, the Westcott Hort, and the Robinson Pierpont. They will all have that in verse 3. And so here's this again. We see that. And the Robinson Pierpont, verse 3. And here's this word again. So it's fairly simple, fairly simple to read this particular critical apparatus. And let's take a look at one more passage here. And I'm going to go to 1 John chapter 5. Because that's a pretty big one. I think I typed it in wrong, didn't I? There we go. And I think it's when we get down to verse 7. We have a lot of manuscripts. I think this is called, I believe, scholars call this the Johannine comma. I think that's what it's called. I'm not 100% sure, so if I butcher that, please forgive me. I'm certainly no expert on this. But it's verse 7, for there are three that bear witness in heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Spirit, and these three are one. And a lot of the most earliest reliable manuscripts don't have that. And so they're oftentimes left out of some of the newer translations. I don't believe the ESV has it. I'm not sure about the NASB. I would have to check. But we can go down to verse 7 here. If we scroll up to verse 7, our text will scroll with us. And we don't see anything for verse 7 in here, but if you go to other editions like the NA28, and again, we're not too worried about it, we go to verse 7 on the NA28, and we're going to start seeing these little marks here showing us the different variants for this. And we're not going to look too much at the NA28, but I do this because this is a highly kind of debated passage as far as among scholars, whether it's genuine, whether it's not. Most scholars would say it's not genuine. But anyway, I just kind of wanted to show you the base of the critical apparatus for the SBLGNT. It's fairly simple to read, and let's go over it one more time. The base text, starting in verse 6, you have this word here in verse 6 in 1 John chapter 5. You have the word in, the preposition, which is the base text. So if you go to the SBLGNT and go to verse 6, you'll see the word in. And it's supported also in the critical editions of the Westcott Hort, the Treglis, and the NA28. And then this little sign here, if you're ever confused, at least in logos, you can always click on that, and it says the indicated text is omitted by the listed witnesses. So the Robinson Pierpont does not list this word. So again, very simple to read. The easiest one, in my opinion, out of all the apparatuses to read. You still get a good amount of variants to look at, and although it's not exhaustive and you don't go over every single manuscript, you're getting a good idea because, like I said, the critical editions, they have already taken all of these other manuscripts into consideration when they compiled their one single edition for it. And so you're basically what you're kind of getting is you're kind of getting the core of the variants that are within this. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop me a line. Hit me up on the Logos Bible Tips and Tricks on the Facebook page, and this is where this video is going to be at. Hope this has been beneficial. I hope I've explained it well. If not, and you need some clarification, just ask. I'll be glad to do it. Thanks, and let me know how I can be of help.